Hello, Periscope. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everyone doing today? Happy Wednesday. I hope everyone's week is going awesome. If you live in the Chicagoland area, I'm sure you are very excited about the weather that we have been experiencing. I know that I am excited about the weather that we have been experiencing. I love warm weather. Good morning, Tina Deneede. Good morning, Chica RN. Thank you guys for already sharing, already inviting your followers. You guys rock. Is that Jimmy? I think that's my brother Jimmy. Jimmy, if that's you, good morning. I love you, brother. Good morning, God is on my side. Good morning, Mrs. Brody. Life's Journey. Thank you, Molly, her hummingbird, for sharing on Facebook. Hello. Hey, Jimmy, it's you. What's up, brother? So glad you joined. Good morning, Joy Pleasant. Hey, Rochelle. Hello, hello. I'm glad you enjoyed yesterday's scope. Good morning, good morning, good morning. All right, well, I hope that everybody's day is off to a great start. I hope you enjoyed the Periscope yesterday in honor of this week being the week of the online singles conference at which I have the honor and privilege to speak at. I am talking about relationships. So yesterday we talked about how the consequence of a bad relationship isn't just getting a heartache or isn't just getting your heart broken or get your feelings hurt, but is ultimately the destruction of your purpose. It was really good. I think it renewed even my mind about why we shouldn't settle and why we should continue to wait for the one God has for us. And if you by chance missed yesterday's scope, please go to youtube.com, type in my first and last name, and you can find yesterday's scope on YouTube. A kind lady that goes to my church named Joyce Dottie. I love her. She puts all of my Periscopes on YouTube. So if you missed yesterday's and you want to go watch yesterday's as well, just go to YouTube and type in my first and last name. Okay, and if you don't know how to spell it because my last name's a little difficult, it is on my Periscope bio. So, all right, well, good morning, everybody. In continuation of what we started talking about yesterday, about bad relationships and why you should be so careful not to enter into a bad relationship, today I want to talk about why people get in bad relationships in the first place. You know, a lot of times we find ourselves settling. A lot of times we find ourselves ignoring the warning signs. So yesterday we talked about, you know, how the warning signs are there. But I think that there are reasons that we begin to ignore the warning signs, and these set us up to settle. And a lot of times the setup that the devil begins to try to make you settle for the wrong relationship begins at a very early stage and at a very young age in your life. So I want to go ahead and talk about why it is that we settle. Why is it that we get in bad relationships? You know, I think if you were to talk to a lot of people, nobody in their right mind would ever say, you know what, I really want to end up in a bad relationship. I want to have a divorce. That sounds like so much fun. I love bad relationships. Okay, sir, goodbye. I love bad relationships. I love getting my feelings hurt. I love being heartbroken. I love being disappointed. I really honestly think that unless somebody was maybe out of their mind, no one ever says, I'm looking for a bad or destructive relationship. People don't enjoy being hurt. But why is it that it seems that almost the majority of people end up in wrong relationships? Why is it that in the most progressive age we've ever lived in, people, the percentage of people getting divorced just continues to go up and up? And even more sadly, specifically in the Christian community. So why is it that so many people would say they don't want to be in bad relationships, and yet they find themselves in the midst of one? There is a reason we ignore the warning signs, and we must begin to deal with these things. Oh my gosh, what is going on today? The devil is mad about something. I'm sorry, I gotta try to block these people. People are out of control. I need the saints to intercede. I don't know why the devil is so mad today about something. All right, so we're going to keep going. So I want to begin to talk about why it is that we settle and what causes us, or the great setup that causes us to settle. You know, many people think that they choose to settle at one choice throughout their lives, but there are many choices, many things that happen to us in our past, many things that happen to us in our childhood that cause us to settle and cause us to end up in wrong relationships. So I want to talk about a few of those things today, and then I want to offer you guys a solution. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is why people end up in bad relationships and why people ignore the warning signs. And this may not seem related, but I'm going to connect it for you guys. So the first reason that I believe that people settle, ignore the warning signs, and end up in bad relationships is their lack of trust in God. You know, a lot of us say we have faith to believe God for this, we trust God with that, we love God, we serve God, we call ourselves a Christian, yet at the end of the day, our choices and our actions would show otherwise. Because if you truly trusted God, what that means is that you would submit to Him, what that means is that you would hear from Him, and the Bible tells us that every good and perfect thing comes from God, that His plans are to prosper us and not to harm us. So God would never lead you into a bad relationship. God would never lead you into something to hurt you. So why is it that we say we love God, we say we trust God, we say we submit to Him, yet we end up in destructive relationships? And at the end of the day, the reason why is because ultimately, if we had to truly measure it, we don't honestly trust God. And I think the reason that so many of us don't trust Him is because we don't know Him. So if you feel like, a lot of times people will say hindsight is 20/20. And a lot of times after getting out of a destructive relationship, people will reflect back and say, you know what, I heard God telling me no, but I didn't listen. I saw God giving me warning signs. God sent mentors, God sent prophets, God sent people to tell me that this was not the right relationship. But not only did I ignore God, I ignored the people and the warning signs that He tried to give me. And the reason that we ignore God is because we don't trust Him. And the reason we don't trust Him is because we don't know Him. I am truly convinced that if we were to mess around to get a real revelation of who God is, that it would be impossible for us not to trust Him. Because when you get to know somebody who is perfect, when you get to know somebody who loves you more than you love yourself, when you get to know somebody whose every promise over your life is yes and amen and cannot be thwarted by any plans or plots of hell or of men, then you would trust them. If we truly got to know a God who knows what He has in mind for us, who has only good thoughts towards us, we would trust Him, knowing that when He tells us no, it's not because He's punishing us, it's not because He's withholding anything, because the Bible tells us that no good thing would you withhold from those who love you, from those who seek your face, from those who serve you. So when we really got to know God and really knew who He was, it would be easy for us to accept His no. But the reason that we reject His no, deny His no, push against His no, and even rebel or ignore altogether His no is because we don't know Him enough to trust Him. We are afraid of being put to shame. We're afraid that if we listen to His no, we're afraid that if we accept His no, that what that means is that we'll never see the promise, that what that means is that we're going to be single forever, that what that means is that we're always going to be alone. We are so afraid of shame. I feel like our generation truly struggles with the idea of putting to shame because we are such a performance-based generation. We find our identity in success, we find our identity in fame, we find our identity in platform, in numbers, in hearts, in likes. And so there's this big fear of being put to shame. So we're afraid that if we allow God's temporary no, because we have to understand that when God tells you no, it's not a no forever, but it's a no right now until He can bring that better yes. But we're so afraid of being put to shame. But it's so interesting because we're so afraid of being put to shame, so we get into these bad, destructive relationships, which end up putting us to shame anyways. Shame is defined by this: a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. So it's so interesting that we have a fear of being put to shame, which causes us to get into wrong relationships, which ultimately will put us to shame. But this is what we have to begin to understand in order to trust God and to know Him, is Psalm 25:3, which says, "Indeed, none of those who expectantly wait for you will be put to shame." In our generation, we have a microwave mentality. We want things instantaneously. We want things right now. We don't know how to be patient, and we don't know how to wait. So when God tells us no, we drag our feet, we cry, we kick and scream on the floor and say, we want it right now. We're afraid to be put to shame. We're afraid to wait. wait. We haven't cultivated endurance. And this social media world shows us that we can get what we want right away. They say that our attention span continues to lessen and lessen. So we have forgot and neglected the beauty of patience and the gifts that come with patience. Because Psalms 25 promises us that those who expectantly wait for the Lord will never be put to shame. Those who turn away from what is right and deal treacherously without cause will be ashamed. So it says right there that those who turn away from what is right will be put to shame. So it's so interesting how the cycle perpetuates, because we're afraid to be put to shame. So we ignore God and do what we want now. We turn away from what is right, which the Bible tells us is exactly what will lead us to humiliation, is exactly what will lead us to embarrassment. So what we have to begin to understand is if you have a problem trusting God, if you have a problem listening to his no, if you have a problem getting in relationships when he clearly tells you not to, the issue at hand is that you don't trust him because you don't know him. So you have to begin to know him. These are things that you need to meditate on, that the Bible tells us that every good and perfect thing comes from him, that the Bible tells us that when we seek him first and his righteousness, when we seek the kingdom of God, that all these things shall be added on to us. The Bible promises us that he works together in all things for the good of those who love us. The Bible tells us that he has a plan for us, plans to prosper us and not to harm us, and plans to give us a hope and a future. So what we have to begin to understand is the reason we end up in these deadbeat relationships with people who are honestly losers, who do not love us, who do not care about us, is because we don't know the God we serve. Because if we knew the God we serve, we would not want to spend one moment wasting our time in the wrong relationship, and we would begin actually to rejoice at God's no, because one of God's no's is one step closer to his yes. One of God's no's means that I love you so much, son, I love you so much, daughter, that I'm telling you no because I have something better for you. Why we despise God's no and get into the wrong relationships anyways is because we don't value his no, and we don't truly understand that his no now is his commitment in us and is his promise to give us a better yes. So when God tells you no, it's because he loves you. When God tells you no, it's because he's committed to you. When God tells you no, it's because he has something better for you. So we've got to learn to love God's no. So when someone comes along and says, hey, I'd like to take you on a date. Hey, let's go to coffee. And God says, you know what? He may look like a great guy, but tell him no. When someone pops that inbox on Facebook and says, hey, woman of God, I love your ministry. Thank you, brother. How are you? Have a blessed day. When God says no, I say, okay, God, I see your no. And I know that that no is one step closer to a yes. I know that that no is because you value my purpose. You value my destiny. And you don't want to see me end up in a relationship that will destroy that. So I know that every no is one step closer to a yes. Every no shows me how much God is invested in me. So what we have to begin to do is we have got to learn who God truly is, and we have got to learn to love his no. All right. Reason number 2. That the great setup takes place, and that the setup causes us to settle. And the reason that people end up in dead-end relationships is because they do not know who they are. We are walking around in a generation full of people thirsty for identity, thirsty to know why they are here, hungry to know what their purpose is, searching for their purpose, searching for their destiny, searching for the meaning of life. We are a generation who actually wants to know wants to be connected to some kind of spirituality, wants to be connected to something greater. But the thing is that we have been in an identity crisis where we are finding our identity in all the wrong things. And this is what I have to tell you. If you don't know who you are, you can't possibly value who you are. If you don't know who you are, how are you going to value you? If you don't know your worth, how are you going to value and protect your worth? If you don't know your worth, if you don't know your value, if you don't know why you're here, then you're not going to protect it. You're not going to say, you know what, I know I'm better than this. If you don't know, if someone hands you a quarter, if someone comes over here from another country and someone hands them $1, but someone doesn't know the worth of $1, and someone comes up to them and says, hey, I have this real shiny quarter, it's beautiful, it's worth more than that dollar. That dollar is just a piece of paper. This is a piece of gorgeous metal. I want to trade you that dollar for that quarter. Well, if the person is unaware of the value of the dollar that they possess, then they will quickly trade in that dollar for that quarter because that quarter looks shiny. The dollar looks like a piece of paper, easily ripped, easily torn. It gets wet. It looks ruinable. So if someone does not know the value of a dollar, then when the devil comes flashing a quarter, they're going to say, take this dollar. I want that quarter. So that's what we have to understand is if you do not know your value, you'll trade it in for something less. So we have got to begin to know who we are. If we lack identity, what this does is this will cause us to search for our identity. And when we lack our identity, usually what we begin to search for that in is people. We want people to come and validate us. We want people to come and tell us who we are. We want people to give us our identity. But what this does, if you are a person who does not know who you are setting yourself up to settle because you will attract people who use flattery and who use manipulation because they will over-compliment you to get what you want. If you are a person who does not know who you are like a red flashing light for those who like to take advantage of people, for Jezebel, for Delilah, for controlling and manipulative people because they see you as an easy target because they know you don't know your worth. So you may be the next Billy Graham. You may be, the next president. You may be the next person that's going to solve cancer. You may be one of the smartest, most intelligent people in the world. But if you don't know your worth, then you basically put a sign on your forehead that says, take advantage of me, and you will attract manipulative people. You will attract people who flatter. So there will be these people who will come to you and over-compliment you. They'll lay on the compliments thick. They'll use flattery to manipulate you to get into relationship with them because they know all they have to do is they can abuse and abuse and abuse and use and use and use, and they flatter you one time, give you one good compliment one time, and you're going to stay because you're desperate for identity. You're desperate to be affirmed. You're desperate to find a place of belonging. So when you don't know who you are setting yourself up to be used, to be abused, to be manipulated, and to end up in wrong, bad, dead-end relationships. If you don't know your worth, then people are going to take advantage of that. That's the world we live in. So we have to know who we are. Another thing that happens when you don't know who you are is you are simply insecure. That is just a given. If you don't know who you are, how could you possibly be secure? You don't know who you are insecure. And what that causes you to do is it causes you to idolize and it causes you to worship people. You feel the burden to prove yourself or to prove your worth to everyone, which means you become a people pleaser. And if you are a people pleaser, I have been there, I have done that. Something I struggle with is being a people pleaser. Because I am afraid of abandonment. I am afraid of being rejected. So let me just go ahead and please you so that I don't have to deal with your abandonment and I don't have to deal with your rejection. But if you are a people pleaser, again, you put that flashing sign on your head saying, please use me. Please abuse me. Please take advantage of me. Please force me to perform. Because if you are a people pleaser, you feel this need because you're so insecure to prove your worth to other people. Because you don't even know your worth. You don't know your value. So you're going to go around in this constant cycle of trying to prove your worth, of trying to prove your validity, of trying to prove your value to other people because you are insecure. This sets you up for bad relationships. This will force you to ignore the warning signs because it's going to feel so good to have someone's approval. So someone could slap you, beat you, but then say, baby, I love you. And you'll stay because you want that approval so bad. Someone will cheat on you, run around on you. Someone will smoke, drink, curse, whatever. And you'll be a bona fide Christian, but you'll be like, well, they tell me they love me. They tell me I'm pretty, so I'm going to stay. Because you don't know who you are and because you are insecure. All of these things set you up to settle. All right, the third thing, and this is a huge thing that sets you up to settle, is an undealt with past. If you have not dealt with your past, if you have not dealt with your childhood, if you have not dealt with past abuse, past molestation, past abandonment and rejection from your parents, you are going to attract the wrong people. The devil begins, yesterday we talked about how relationships do two things. They either usher you or push you further into your destiny, your calling, and your purpose, or they either destroy it. God God wants to use relationships to set you up for success. The devil wants to use relationships to set you up for failure. So this setup begins at such a young age. The devil begins to come in and teach you can't trust men by having your father leave you. The devil begins to come in and make you feel like as a daughter that you aren't worth love, that you aren't worth affection, that you aren't worth affirmation by having your father abuse you. Young men, the devil begins to set them up by making their mother abandon them or making their mother force them because she doesn't have a husband to make them act or grow up as a man before their time. She causes them to say, hey, don't cry, don't do this, you need to be a man's man. So all of these things begin to affect us in childhood, and if undealt with, will cause us to attract the wrong people and to get in abusive relationships. A lot of people say you marry your father or you marry your... Okay, goodbye, sir. A lot of people say you marry your father or you marry your mother. Now, in some cases, this could be good, but for a lot of us, this would be terrible. I pray to God I don't marry a man like my father. But I see how in the past, when I got into bad relationships, these men looked a lot like my father. And the thing is that because my father abandoned me, because my father rejected me, I was trying to find someone who looked like him that would affirm me so I could subconsciously get the affirmation from my father that I never received as a child. So you may be thinking, okay, this sounds great, but is this provable? Is this verifiable? So here's from even a psychological standpoint. There was an article published in Psychology Today that began to deal with why people end up in destructive relationships. So I'm giving you the spiritual facts. I'm giving you, verifiable information from the Bible. But for those of you who are like, I want the scientific side of it, this article was titled, Why People End Up in Destructive Relationships. It was published on Psychology Today. So listen, okay, Jesus be offense today. Listen to why psychologists say people end up in destructive relationships. Okay, this is what they say about an undealt with past. The experiences that make us who we are also influence who we choose as a partner. While most of us claim to be looking for true love with real compatibility and no drama, there are often unconscious influences, thoughts, and behaviors leading us to just the opposite of that. Many of us pick partners who help us stay within our comfort zone, even if that zone turns out to not be at all desirable. People seek what is familiar, even if it is destructive. If our past was filled with feelings of rejection or inadequacy, we are drawn to scenarios in which we feel the same way as adults. So what are psychologists telling us here? They're telling us the same thing that God's been telling us in the Bible for thousands of years, that there are such things as generational curses, that if you don't get healed and if you don't get whole from your past, what happens is that you will be attracted to what you have been shown your entire life. If your daddy abused you or hit you, you may end up with a man who abused you or hit you because that's how you learn to receive love. If your daddy cheated on your mom or your mama cheated on your daddy, you may end up with a wife who runs around on you because that's what you learned as love as a young child. If you grew up as an unstable, one thing I had to learn is I grew up in an extremely unstable environment. I had a dad, 3 stepdads, men constantly in and out of my life. So what I realized is I almost love the drama of relationships. When I was in high school, the kind of people I dated drug dealers. I dated people who were in and out of rehab. I had my first serious boyfriend who I love actually overdosed at my house. He had to go to rehab. And the reason I realized that I was in love with these shaky relationships is because that's what I knew from my past. I almost loved the drama. I almost loved the shouting, the screaming, the fighting, the crying, because that's all I knew from my past. I knew inconsistency. I knew drama. I knew abuse. So what happened was I found out I almost enjoyed the drama. I almost enjoyed being in relationships that were unstable with people I couldn't quite figure out. When great men would come along and they would be stable men, loving men who would truly compliment me, love me, and be stable, I'd almost be like, oh, I don't like that. But then when those abusive ones would come along, I didn't know if they were going to like me still on Friday. One day they were nice. The next day they were cursing me out and slamming me into walls. I was like, all right, I like this because this is what I'm used to. And I didn't even realize it because it was a subconscious thing that took place. It was my past setting me up to fail in my future. It was the devil coming in and sowing seeds saying, hey, love is abusive. Love is inconsistent. Love is trying to prove yourself. I liked a good challenge. So when somebody was addicted to drugs, you never knew what side of them you were going to get. So I was addicted to drug dealers. I was addicted to men who had drug addictions, because what that meant is I got to play this game of trying to prove to them that I was worth their love. I was fighting against drugs. I was fighting against other women. I was fighting against all these other things. But that's what I learned. I learned that love was to perform. So even when good men in high school would come along, people, whatever, quarterback of the football team, whatever, nice people going places in life, I'd be like, you're boring, no thanks. But I was attracted to dysfunction because dysfunction was all I had known my entire life. This is what the article goes on to say. Often and it says exactly what I'm saying right now. Often we select partners who reinforce deep-seated critical views we have of ourselves. For example, listen to this. Okay, my God, what's going on today? Often we select partners who reinforce deep-seated critical views we have of ourselves. For example, a person who had a parent who was emotionally unavailable or was inconsistent in offering warmth and affection may think of themselves as unlovable on a basic level. As an adult, they may be initially attracted to someone whose attention makes them feel good about themselves, but eventually they start to notice that their partner is resistant to getting close and can even be disregarding. Even as they are tormented by feelings of rejection, they usually fail to realize that the very reason they were so drawn to this person in the first place was because they sense that he or she supports these all too familiar feelings of being inadequate and being undeserving. I mean, that is just so deep. Right there we see that the devil is setting us up from such a young age to allow the cycles that our parents taught us to perpetuate. Generational curses. They showed you that love was not being consistent. They showed you that love, you only got it when you performed well. They showed you that love was beating you and abuse. They showed you that love was cursing you out and throwing you into the walls. They showed you that love was, maybe one day I feel like loving you, maybe the next day I don't. They showed you that love was leaving you and abandoning you. So that's what you learn to identify as love, and that's why we end up in these terrible relationships. So if you want to know why you end up in a relationship with someone like your mommy or your daddy, you want to end up in all these abusive relationships, my question to you is this: have you dealt with your past? Because an undealt with past will cause you to end up in repeated cycles of abusive relationships. So that right there, those three things are how we get set up to settle and why we ignore the warning signs and get into bad relationships. As I shared yesterday, I am extremely passionate about seeing people ending up in the right relationships, in those Elijah and Elisha relationships, in those Sarah and Abraham relationships, in those Mary and Joseph relationships, in that Peter and Timothy relationships that further usher you and push you into your destiny. But if you are not careful and you don't begin to deal with these things that set you up for relational failure, you will end up in, like we talked about, the Samson and Delilah relationships. So today I talked about why we ignore the warning signs. But if you want to know what some of these warning signs are, yesterday we talked about how a relationship, the destructive parts of a relationship are coming for your destiny. Today we talked about why it is that we ignore those warning signs. But if you're like, okay, I really don't want to end up in a bad relationship, which honestly I hope is everyone on this Periscope, whether you're single, whether you're dating, or whether you're engaged. Engagement doesn't mean that the deal is signed. Engagement means that you're still trying to figure out, is this person the right person for you? So whether you're single, dating, or engaged, you need to know the warning signs that he or she is not Mr. or Mrs. Right. Because sometimes we ignore those signs. Sometimes we get into destructive relationships anyways. But having been someone myself personally who has been in the most destructive and dysfunctional relationships, who has even gone through a devastating divorce a few years ago, I know that it is now part of my calling to help people enter into the right relationships and avoid destructive relationships. So, if you're listening and you're like, hey, I don't want to end up in one of these destructive relationships, or I'm sick of this same cycle of ending up in bad relationship after bad relationship and I don't know why, I need to know the warning signs, then I have an answer for you. I don't know if you guys know who Married and Young is, Jamal and Natasha Miller. They are changing the game for Christian singles and for Christian married couples. They are changing the game of Christian relationships, and tonight they are allowing me to co-host a webinar with them called the 7 Warning warning signs that he is not Mr. Right or that she is not Mrs. Right. So if you want to know the warning signs, if you want to avoid getting into a bad relationship, this webinar that we are doing tonight is completely free. We just want to help people. We are just sick and tired of seeing Christians ending up in bad relationships that destroys their purpose. So if you are sick of that cycle, if you've seen your mom and dad and everyone else you know be in bad relationships, then what you need to do is you need to learn the warning signs to be free. Let the perpetuating cycle stop with you. Let the generational curse stop with you. Let the bad relationships stop right now. Stop ruining your life. So what I want you to do is I want you to sign up for this absolutely free webinar tonight that myself and Jamal and Natasha Miller, the co-founders of marriedandyoung.com, are going to be hosting, called the 7 Warning Signs that he or she is not Mr. or Mrs. Right. This is for everybody. If you want to sign up, go to my Periscope bio, and there is a link in there. There's a link in there of how you can sign up. So let's stop the generational curse of ending up in these perpetually bad relationships. Let's stop selling out our destiny and forfeiting our destiny for the sake of feeling good or for the sake of having someone to keep us warm at night. We need to learn what these warning signs are so that we can truly begin to rise up as the solutions that God has created us to be. You know, the reason that the world looks the way it does today is because there is an attack on the family unit. Men are no longer fathers. Women are no longer mothers. The divorce rate is at an all-time high. The devil is truly trying to use divorce and destructive relationships to destroy the solution that God has called you to be. So I'm coming against that attack. I refuse to see my generation perish. I refuse to see these solutions stopped because people are getting into destructive relationships. I'm sick of seeing Delilahs ruin Samsons. So I want you guys to go to my Periscope bio and to sign up for this completely free webinar that I will be hosting with Jamal and Natasha Miller tonight, called 7 Warning Signs that he or she is not Mr. or Mrs. Right. Go sign up right now. It's completely free. If you aren't registered, register now. If you are registered, share with your friends, share with your family, share on Facebook. Let's get as many people in there. Do you think we should watch with the people we are considering to date? Sure, absolutely. I think it'll open up hard conversations for you guys to have to see. Are you guys really, connected destiny-wise? Are you guys really good for each other? So go sign up for that. If you are not registered for the online singles conference, you should be registered for that. The online singles conference is a completely online conference with over 17 different world-class leading relationship experts that are going to teach single people how to be prepared, how to let go of their past, how to prepare themselves for marriage, and how to walk in their fullness of purpose and destiny. So if you aren't signed up for that, you can go to my Facebook page, wisdomisthenewblack.com, and sign up to be a part of that conference this Friday. I will be speaking there, but really the roster is full of people who are much more impressive than I am and are truly relationship experts who are world-class international speakers on relationships. So make sure you sign up for that as well. All right, so I hope everybody is feeling free today, because we just found out the setup to settle and why we ignore the warning signs. So yes, Dr. Faith Wakoma will be there. She is the bomb.com. Apostles Matthew and Camila Stevenson, who are amazing, my spiritual parents, will be on that conference. Heather and Cornelius Lindsay will be on that conference. Lamar and Ronnie Tyler. It's an amazing setup. So go get your free webinar tonight, and then go right now and sign up for the online singles conference. We as singles are going to be free in this season, and it's going to be awesome. So I love you guys so much. I will see you tonight, and make sure you join tonight as well, because Jamal and Natasha and I are all going to have a special offer for you as well. So I love you guys. Have an awesome Wednesday, and I will see you guys tonight. Like I said, there will be a webinar tonight, so make sure you join. People are asking me what time. I'm trying to remember what time. I have so much going on. Jesus, help me figure this out, God. It's at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thanks, guys. People got my back. That's why you guys are my #Scope family. I just show up at the right place at the right time because I just got so much going on. But I feel blessed and honored to be doing it. So 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7 warning signs he isn't or she isn't Mr. or Mrs. Right. I will see you guys there. Have a blessed Wednesday. Do not miss this. It's free. You have no reason to miss this. It is absolutely free. So love you guys. Register for that. Register for the online singles conference, and I will see you tonight at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We are going to be turning up and talking about how to avoid those relationships that will destroy your destiny. Have a great day. Bye.